Have you ever wondered why, no matter how smart or independent you are, you keep ending up with the same kind of man? Different names, different faces, yet the story is always the same, and it hurts in the exact same way. Here's the shocking truth. Studies show that nearly 70% of women in therapy report repeating the exact same relationship patterns over and over. But the real problem isn't him. It's the wound, the same wound from childhood that still whispers inside you, silently scripting your love story without you even realizing it. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what happens when unhealed wounds from childhood follow you into adulthood. They don't just shape how you love, they dictate who you choose, what you tolerate, and how long you stay. And in this video, we're going to uncover the 5 hidden wounds that secretly control your relationships. The abandonment that taught you to wait, the criticism that shattered your self-worth, the indifference disguised as love, the invasion of your true identity, and the deepest of them all, the betrayal of your own self-love. But here's the most important part. You'll also learn how to break free from each one, step by step, so you never have to repeat the same story again. If something in you is already stirring, like a quiet voice saying, "That's me," don't click away. Stay until the end, because what you'll discover here could save you years, even decades, of repeating the same painful cycle. And if this message already resonates, hit that like button right now. It's free for you, but it helps this message reach thousands of women who need to hear it today. Part 1. The Hidden Cycle. Imagine this. A woman promises herself she'll never fall for the same kind of man again. Her last relationship was painful, full of silence, waiting, and disappointment. She swears this time will be different. But a few months later, there she is again, sitting on the couch, staring at her phone, waiting for another man who's not calling back. Different face, different job, different city, and yet the same heartbreak. Why does this happen? Psychologists call it repetition compulsion. It's the mind's way of trying to redo an old wound, hoping that this time the ending will be different. But here's the trap. Instead of healing, you end up reliving the same pain. Your nervous system doesn't choose what's healthy, it chooses what's familiar. And if your childhood was marked by absence, criticism, or silence, then your body confuses pain with love. Take Emily, for example, a successful woman with a thriving career. She once told me, "I don't get it. I date different kinds of men, lawyers, athletes, entrepreneurs, but somehow the pattern is always the same. They pull away and I'm left waiting." When we traced it back, Emily remembered being a little girl sitting by the window waiting for her dad to come home. Sometimes he showed up, many times he didn't. That waiting became her definition of love. Decades later, she wasn't choosing men, she was choosing her wound. And here's the small but powerful lesson. You don't repeat men, you repeat wounds. Until you make those wounds conscious, the cycle will keep spinning. If this is already resonating with you, type yes in the comments because you're not alone in this. And that brings us to the very first wound, the one that silently writes the love story of millions of women around the world. It's the wound of abandonment. And once you see it clearly, you'll never look at your relationships the same way again. Part 2. Childhood Roots of Adult Love. Every love story begins long before the first kiss, the first date, or even the first heartbreak. It begins in childhood, inside the invisible classroom where we first learned what love feels like. For some of us, love meant comfort and warmth. For others, it meant waiting by the door, hoping someone would notice. And for many, it meant walking on eggshells, never sure if love would show up as kindness or as criticism. Psychologists call this attachment theory. The way a child bonds with a parent, whether through security, anxiety, or avoidance, becomes the blueprint for how that child will later bond with a partner. If love in childhood felt safe, you grow into an adult who trusts. If love felt inconsistent, you grow into an adult who waits, chases, and doubts. If love felt cold or critical, you may confuse distance with passion or approval with love. Carl Jung once said, "The child is father of the man." In other words, the child you once were still shapes the adult you've become. Think of Daniel, a man who grew up with a mother who was warm one moment and distant the next. As a boy, he learned that love was unpredictable. As an adult, Daniel found himself drawn to women who were emotionally unavailable. He told me, "I don't know why, but the harder she pulls away, the more I want her." That wasn't love speaking. It was his childhood wound, replaying the old script of unpredictability. Here's the lesson. Your adult love life is not just about who you choose. It's about what feels familiar to your inner child. If this is opening your eyes, hit that like button right now. It may seem small, but it helps this message reach thousands of others who are still stuck in the same cycle. Now that you understand where the cycle begins, let's look at the very first wound, the wound of abandonment, because once you see how abandonment shows up in love, you'll understand why waiting has become the silent habit of so many women's hearts. Part 3, wound number 1, the abandonment that never healed. Picture this. A little girl sits by the window, backpack still on her shoulders. Her father promised he'd come pick her up after school. She waits, 5 minutes, 10 an hour, cars come and go. Other kids leave with their parents. But her seat by the window stays filled with silence. That moment may seem small, but in her heart, a belief begins to take root. Love means waiting. Love means maybe they won't come. This is the wound of abandonment. And here's what's important to understand. Abandonment isn't always physical. Sometimes a parent is there in the house, but not emotionally present. Sometimes a mother cares for your body, but not for your soul. And the child grows up feeling invisible, unheard, unseen. Psychologists call this emotional neglect, and research shows it's one of the strongest predictors of adult relationship anxiety. Your nervous system remembers absence more than presence. And so, as an adult, you unconsciously seek out what feels familiar. Partners who leave you waiting, partners who pull away, partners who disappear. Take Maria, for example. As a child, she spent countless nights waiting for her dad to come home. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. Her heart learned to live in the space between hope and disappointment. Years later, Maria fell in love with a man named James. He was charming, ambitious, but always absent. Unanswered texts, broken promises, late-night silences. Maria thought she was choosing James. In reality, she was choosing her father, over and over again. Here's the lesson. You don't chase the man, you chase the missing parent. And until you see that clearly, you'll call waiting patience, when in truth, it's abandonment replaying itself. If this resonates with you, if you've ever felt like you're always the one waiting, let me know in the comments with the word "seen." Because the first step in healing abandonment is finally allowing yourself to be seen. And while abandonment plants the seed of "I'm not enough to be chosen," it's not the only wound that shapes how you love. The next wound cuts just as deep. The wound of criticism, the one that quietly shatters your self-worth. Part 4, wound number 2, the criticism that shattered your self-worth. Imagine a little girl proudly holding up her report card. She worked hard, studied late into the night, and finally brought home straight A's. Her heart is bursting with hope. Mom's going to be so proud. But instead of a hug, she hears, "Why didn't you get an A+? You can do better." In that moment, joy turns into shame, and a silent belief takes root. No matter what I do, it's never enough. This is the wound of criticism. And here's what makes it so devastating. The child doesn't just hear the parent's words, they become the child's inner voice. Over time, that voice turns into the inner critic, the constant whisper that says, "You're not good enough, you must do more, you must be perfect to deserve love." Carl Jung once said, "The most damaging phrase is the voice inside you that isn't even yours." That's the power of childhood criticism. It tattoos itself onto your unconscious. Take Valeria. Growing up, she always heard her mother say, "That's fine, but you could have done better." When Valeria entered a relationship with Daniel, something strange happened. Every time Daniel raised an eyebrow, stayed quiet for too long, or hinted at disappointment, Valeria panicked. She apologized, over-explained, and bent over backwards to please him. What she didn't realize was this. She wasn't reacting to Daniel. She was still reacting to her mother's voice, echoing inside her head. Here's the lesson. You don't seek approval from your partner. You're chasing the approval you never got as a child. And until you silence that inner critic, you'll keep attracting people who mirror it back to you. If you've ever felt trapped by that critical voice, drop the word "enough" in the comments. Because the truth is, you were always enough. You just didn't grow up hearing it. But criticism isn't the only subtle wound. There's another one, far more hidden, far more dangerous. because it wears a mask. It's the wound of indifference disguised as love. And once you see it, you'll never mistake crumbs of affection for love again. Part 5, wound number 3, indifference disguised as love. When you think of childhood wounds, you might imagine yelling, harsh words, or even abandonment. But some of the deepest scars come from something far quieter: indifference. Imagine a child showing her mom a drawing. She worked hard on it, colors spilling outside the lines, her little heart proud. Her mom glances for 2 seconds, says that's nice, and turns back to her phone. No anger, no cruelty, just nothing. And slowly, the child learns a dangerous lesson. Love doesn't see me. Love doesn't really care. This is the wound of indifference. And it's so deceptive because from the outside, everything looks fine. The child is fed, clothed, even praised at times. But emotionally, she feels invisible. Psychologists call this emotional neglect, and research shows it can be even more damaging than direct abuse, because at least abuse acknowledges your existence. Indifference tells you, you don't matter enough to be noticed. Take Vanessa. Her father provided everything she needed: food, shelter, education. But he never asked how she felt, never hugged her, never really listened. Years later, Vanessa met Michael. At first, he seemed attentive, but soon he grew distant. He'd cancel plans, respond with one-word texts, or stay emotionally unavailable. And instead of walking away, Vanessa tried harder. She texted more, cooked for him, forgave the silences. Why? Because deep down, her nervous system recognized that emptiness. Indifference felt like home. Here's the lesson. If you grew up with indifference, you'll mistake crumbs for a feast. You'll call half love enough because that's what you were trained to accept. But true love is not indifferent. True love is presence. If this part speaks to you, write the word present in the comments, because healing begins when you stop accepting crumbs and start demanding presence. And while indifference teaches you to accept too little, the next wound is even more dangerous, because it doesn't just ignore who you are, it tries to erase who you are. This is the wound of identity invasion, and it might explain why you've lost yourself in relationships. Part 6, wound number 4, the invasion of your identity. Some wounds don't leave you waiting. Some wounds don't criticize you or ignore you. Instead, they tell you who you should be until you forget who you really are. Picture a little girl who loves to sing loudly, dance wildly, and wear mismatched clothes. But every time she does, she hears, "Don't act like that. Be a good girl. Do it this way. Why can't you be more like your sister?" Over time, she stops singing, stops choosing her own clothes, stops trusting her own voice, and a mask begins to form, the mask of the perfect daughter. This is the wound of identity invasion. It happens when a child is molded, controlled, or forced to live according to someone else's script. Psychologists call this enmeshment, when a parent's desires override the child's individuality. Carl Jung warned about this when he said, "The unlived life of the parent becomes the burden of the child." And when you grow up under this wound, you learn a painful rule. It's not safe to be myself. To be loved, I must become what others want. Vanessa knows this all too well. As a child, she was told to be the good girl. Never argue, never raise her voice, always obey. When she grew older and started dating, she found herself with controlling partners, men who told her what to wear, who she could see, what was appropriate. At first, Vanessa thought this was love. He just wants the best for me. But deep down, she was reliving the same wound. She wasn't choosing love. She was choosing the comfort of being controlled. Here's the truth. If you were raised to wear a mask, you'll keep attracting people who expect you to hide. And the cost is enormous. You lose yourself piece by piece until you look in the mirror and don't recognize who you are. If you've ever felt like you disappeared in a relationship, type "myself" in the comments, because healing begins the moment you reclaim your voice. But there's one wound even more dangerous than losing your identity. It's the wound that makes you betray not just your voice, but your very soul. The wound of self-betrayal, the most painful cut of all. Part 7, wound number 5, the betrayal of self-love. Some wounds come from others when they leave, when they criticize, when they silence you. But the deepest wound of all is the one you inflict on yourself. Imagine a woman standing in front of the mirror. She once had dreams, laughter, light in her eyes, but now she barely recognizes the woman staring back. She whispers to herself, "I'll forgive him one more time. I'll stay a little longer." Maybe you'll change. And with every compromise, every silence, every broken boundary, she betrays the most sacred relationship of all, the one with herself. This is the wound of self-betrayal. It forms when, as children, we learned that survival meant pleasing others, smiling when we wanted to cry, staying quiet when we wanted to scream, giving when we were already empty. As adults, this becomes a dangerous pattern, tolerating the intolerable, justifying the unjustifiable, and calling it love. Psychologists link this to trauma bonding, when the brain mistakes pain for connection and betrayal for loyalty. Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And that's the truth of this wound. You cannot heal until you face the pain of how many times you've abandoned yourself. Take Mariana. She always said, "I'm strong, I can handle it." She handled lies, cold silences, even infidelity. Each time she told herself, "This is the last time." But it never was, until one day she looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, a shadow of the joyful woman she used to be. That moment broke her, but it also woke her up. She realized it wasn't him destroying me, it was me, betraying myself by staying. The most painful betrayal is not when someone else abandons you, it's when you abandon yourself. And healing begins with one radical act, choosing you, even if it costs the relationship. If this wound resonates, comment the words, "I choose me," because saying it out loud is the first step toward never betraying yourself again. We've now uncovered all 5 wounds: abandonment, criticism, indifference, identity invasion, and self-betrayal. But here's the good news. Awareness is the first doorway to freedom. And in the next part, we'll bring all of this together to show you how to finally break the cycle and create love that feels whole, present, and unforgettable. Part 8, Breaking the Cycle, from Common to Unforgettable. So here we are, we've walked through 5 invisible wounds: abandonment, criticism, indifference, identity invasion, and self-betrayal. And maybe as you listened, you felt a quiet ache inside, because deep down you recognized pieces of yourself in every story. But here's the truth you need to hold on to. You are not condemned to repeat these wounds forever. Awareness is the first key that unlocks the door to freedom. The common path is to keep waiting for someone else to fix what childhood broke, to keep chasing love, hoping this time it will be different. But the unforgettable path, the one that changes everything, is when you choose to break the cycle yourself. Healing means you no longer wait by the window. You no longer apologize for existing. You no longer mistake crumbs for a feast, or masks for identity, or sacrifice for love. Instead, you begin to give yourself what you always deserved: presence, kindness, validation, and respect. And here's the beautiful part. When you change the vibration inside, the relationships outside begin to transform, because love always mirrors the way you love yourself. I once met a woman who told me, "For years I begged men to choose me. Now I choose myself first, and because of that, the love in my life looks completely different." That's what happens when the cycle ends. The cycle doesn't break when someone else stays. The cycle breaks when you stay with yourself. If this message is stirring something inside you, type the words "No More Cycles" in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that like and subscribe button, because this isn't just a video, it's a journey we're walking together. Now that you've seen the cycle for what it is, the next step is learning how to turn this awareness into daily practice, so the healing doesn't just stay in your mind, but flows into your everyday life. That's where the real transformation begins. Part 9, Practical Healing Exercise. Reparenting the Inner Child. Healing doesn't just happen by listening or understanding. It happens when you give your inner child, the little boy or girl still living inside you, what they never received. And this process is called reparenting. Imagine that small version of you, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, the one who felt abandoned, criticized, or unseen. What would change if, instead of ignoring that child like the adults once did, you finally bent down, looked into their eyes, and said, "I see you, I hear you, I'm here now"? Here's a simple but powerful exercise you can start today. 1. Find a quiet space. Sit comfortably and close your eyes. 2. Picture yourself as a child. Imagine what you looked like at the age you first felt unseen or unloved. 3. Start a gentle dialogue. Ask that child, "What do you need right now?" It might be love, safety, encouragement, or simply a hug. 4. Respond as the adult you are today. Say the words you always needed to hear. "You're safe with me. You're worthy, you are enough just as you are. 5. Seal it with a gesture. You can place your hand over your heart as a way of physically anchoring that love. It might feel awkward at first, but research in trauma therapy shows that reparenting helps rewire the nervous system, creating a sense of safety that was missing in childhood. One woman I worked with told me she began this practice every night before bed. After a few weeks, she noticed something extraordinary. For the first time in years, she stopped chasing texts from unavailable men. Why? Because her inner child finally felt chosen. When you give your inner child what no one else gave you, you stop demanding it from people who cannot provide it. If you're ready to try this tonight, comment the words, "I'm here for me." And if this feels powerful, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose healing journey you might spark. Now, reparenting is one way to heal the wound of abandonment. But what about the wound of criticism? In the next part, I'll show you a powerful exercise to silence that inner critic once and for all, so you can finally hear your own voice above the noise. Part 10, Practical Healing Exercise, Silencing the Inner Critic. We all carry an inner voice. For some, it's encouraging, "You've got this." But for many of us, that voice is harsh. "You're not enough. You'll fail. Nobody really loves you." That voice isn't truly yours. It's an echo from a parent, a teacher, or someone who once made you feel small. And the danger is, when you don't challenge it, you begin to believe it. Psychologists call this the internalized critic, the voice of judgment we absorbed in childhood. Left unchecked, it becomes the soundtrack of your life. But here's the good news. Just like any voice in your mind, it can be rewritten. Here's a simple but powerful practice to silence the critic and awaken your authentic voice. 1. Catch the critic. Notice when that voice appears. For example, "You're so stupid, you messed up again." 2. Name it. Instead of letting it run wild, label it. "That's my inner critic, not me." 3. Rewrite it. Replace the phrase with something true and kind. "I made a mistake, but I'm learning. I am still worthy." 4. Anchor it. Speak the new phrase out loud or write it down 3 times. The repetition begins to rewire your brain. Neuroscience shows that every time you challenge the critic, you weaken its hold and strengthen your self-compassion. Valeria grew up with a mother who always said, "You can do better." As an adult, whenever she succeeded, she still heard, "Not enough." When she started practicing this exercise, she realized something powerful. Her critic wasn't her truth, it was her mother's shadow living in her head. By rewriting the script daily, Valeria slowly replaced "not enough" with "I am worthy as I am." And that changed the way she walked into every relationship. The critic is loud, but it isn't yours. Your true voice is softer, kinder, and it's the one that deserves to lead your life. If you're ready to rewrite your inner script, comment, "I choose my true voice." And don't forget to like this video. It tells YouTube that this message deserves to reach more people who are tired of living under that critic's shadow. Now we've calmed the critic. But what about indifference, the silent wound that taught you to accept crumbs instead of love? In the next part, we'll explore a healing practice that helps you reclaim your worth and finally stop mistaking absence for affection. Part 11, Practical Healing Exercise, Reclaiming Your Worth from Indifference. Sometimes the most painful wound isn't the one shouted at us, but the silence. No yelling, no insults, just a cold distance. Maybe you had parents who provided food, clothes, even shelter, but when you needed emotional presence, all you found was indifference. And so as adults, many of us mistake absence for love. We settle for unanswered texts, for partners who give us half effort, for crumbs. And we tell ourselves, "At least it's something." But here's the truth. Love is not indifference. Love is attention. Love is presence. Love is energy flowing both ways. Psychologists call this learned deprivation. If, as a child, you learn to survive on little, your brain assumes that little is enough. And the danger is you'll unconsciously recreate that pattern in every relationship until you decide to rewrite the story. Here's a practice to reclaim your worth when indifference shows up. 1. Sit with your journal. Write down 3 moments in your current or past relationships where you felt ignored, dismissed, or unseen. Name the pattern. Under each moment, write, "This is not love. This is indifference." 3. Flip the script. Now, next to each moment, write what real love would look like. Love answers. Love shows up. Love cares. 4. Affirm your worth. Speak this out loud. I deserve full love, not crumbs. My emotions matter. Do this often, because every time you rewrite the script, you're teaching your nervous system. Indifference is not your home anymore. Mariana once told me, my father never yelled, but he never looked at me either. Years later, she kept dating men who barely texted back, and she thought that was normal. When she did this worth mirror exercise, she cried. For the first time, she realized she wasn't asking for too much. She was asking for what she always deserved. Indifference is not love, and when you reclaim your worth, you stop chasing what was never real to begin with. If this exercise spoke to you, comment the words, I deserve real love. And remember to hit that like and subscribe, because somewhere out there, another woman is still mistaking indifference for love, and your action helps her find this message. We've reclaimed worth from indifference. But what about the wound that steals your very identity? The one that convinces you to become who others want instead of who you truly are. In the next part, we'll dive into a healing practice that helps you reclaim your voice and remember who you were always meant to be. Part 12, Practical Healing Exercise, Reclaiming Your Identity. There's a wound even more dangerous than indifference. It's the wound that doesn't just take your joy, it takes you. Maybe as a child, you were told who to be. Don't be so loud. Why can't you be more like your sister? Good girls don't act that way. And slowly, piece by piece, you learn to wear a mask. You became the pleaser, the good daughter, the quiet one. Not because that's who you were, but because that's who they needed you to be. The tragedy? By the time you're an adult, you can look in the mirror and not even know who's staring back. Psychologists call this the loss of self through identity invasion. When your authentic voice is silenced in childhood, you survive by creating a false self that keeps you safe. But the cost is high. You live for others' approval while forgetting your own desires. The good news? Your authentic self never dies. It waits patiently beneath the masks for the day you give it permission to come alive again. Here's a practice to begin reclaiming your identity. 1. List the masks. Write down the roles you feel forced to play. The perfect one, the strong one, the people pleaser. 2. Spot the voice. Next to each role, write who taught you that. Mom's voice, dad's criticism, society's expectations. 3. Ask your soul. For each role, ask yourself, is this truly me? If not, put a line through it. 4. Name your true desires. Write down 3 things you loved as a child before anyone told you who you should be. Those are the breadcrumbs leading you back to your true self. 5. Daily action. Pick one small act that reflects your authentic self. Wearing what you want, saying what you believe, choosing for yourself. And do it unapologetically. Vanessa grew up being the perfect daughter. She never complained, never raised her voice, never said what she truly wanted. When she married, she repeated the same role, always pleasing, always molding herself to fit. Until one day, she tried this authentic self-journal. She remembered how, as a child, she loved painting. She hadn't touched a brush in 20 years. The next week, she bought paint and started again. And she told me, for the first time in years, I felt like me again. That's the power of reclaiming your identity, not through rebellion, but through remembering. Masks may keep you safe, but they also keep you hidden. Your real power comes when you let your authentic self breathe again. If this exercise touched you, write in the comments, I choose my true self. And make sure to like this video, because somewhere out there, someone is still living under a mask, and your click might be the light that helps them remember who they are. We've reclaimed your identity, but there's one final wound, the most painful of all. It's the wound that doesn't come from others, but from yourself. The wound of betraying your own self-love. In the next part, we'll uncover how to stop abandoning yourself and how to finally become the woman who chooses herself first. Part 13, Practical Healing Exercise. Choosing yourself first. This is the hardest wound of all, because it's not about what others did to you, it's about what you did to yourself. Maybe you've been here. You forgave one more time, even when you swore you wouldn't. You said yes when everything inside you screamed no. You stayed, not because it was love, but because you were afraid of being alone. And afterward, you looked in the mirror and thought, where did I go? Who am I now? That's the betrayal of self-love, the moment when you abandon yourself for the sake of someone else. But here's the beautiful truth. The same way you betrayed yourself, you can also return to yourself.
Carl Jung once said, "There is no awakening of consciousness without pain." And yes, choosing yourself first can feel painful. It may mean walking away, setting boundaries, sitting in silence when you'd rather cling. But here's what psychology tells us. Self-betrayal teaches your brain that your needs don't matter. Every time you tolerate what hurts you, you carve a deeper groove of self-abandonment. The way out? Carve new grooves, ones of dignity, strength, and love for yourself. Here's a practice you can begin today. 1. Write a boundary list. Write down 3 things you will no longer tolerate in relationships, whether it's disrespect, silence, or dishonesty. 2. Create your self-love contract. On a page, write, "I promise to stand by myself. I promise not to betray my values for love. I promise to choose myself, even if it costs me someone else." Sign it with today's date. 3. Daily affirmation. Each morning, read it out loud in front of the mirror. Look into your own eyes and repeat, "I am my first choice. I no longer abandon myself." 4. Act small. Act brave. The next time you face a moment of choice, say no when you mean no. Walk away when your worth is being tested. Each act of bravery heals the wound. Mariana, yes, the same Mariana who once waited endlessly for absent men, told me about her final turning point. One night, after another broken promise, she wrote in her journal, "If I stay, I betray myself. If I go, I might lose him. But if I lose myself, I lose everything." The next morning, she chose herself. It was terrifying, but she told me later, "That was the day I finally came home to me." Choosing yourself is not selfish, it's sacred. Because when you honor yourself, you teach the world how to love you. If this message hit your heart, comment below, "I choose me." And if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe, because someone else out there might need this reminder today.
Now that you've learned to choose yourself first, the journey isn't over, it's just beginning. In the next part, we'll tie everything together and discover how to not only heal, but to rise into a life where love feels safe, whole, and unforgettable. Part 14, Integration. How to live as a healed and whole woman. Healing isn't about collecting exercises or memorizing theories. It's about weaving everything you've learned into the fabric of your everyday life, so it no longer feels like work, but like who you are. Imagine this. You wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and for the first time in years, you see yourself. Not the wounded child, not the pleaser, not the one waiting for crumbs of love, but the woman you've become, whole, present, and grounded. That is what integration looks like. In psychology, healing is not considered complete until the new patterns replace the old ones in daily living. When abandonment no longer dictates your choices, when criticism no longer shapes your worth, when indifference no longer feels like love, when invasion no longer defines your identity, and when self-betrayal is no longer an option, that's when you know the cycle has truly broken. Integration is not perfection, it's consistency. It's choosing, moment after moment, to live from your healed self rather than your wounded self. Here are 3 simple but powerful ways to live as a healed and whole woman. 1. Daily self-check-in. Each morning ask, am I acting from my wound or my wisdom today? This one question will keep you aligned. 2. Practice conscious love. Choose relationships, romantic or otherwise, where presence, respect, and authenticity are the foundation. If they're not, you'll know it's not your space. 3. Anchor in rituals. Healing sticks when it becomes ritual. Journal, meditate, move your body, or speak affirmations. These are not chores, they are anchors reminding you of who you are. I once spoke with a woman named Sophia who had done years of inner work. One day, her ex called, wanting to try again. The old Sophia would have said yes immediately. But this time, she paused, smiled, and simply said, I wish you well, but I choose peace. She told me afterward, that was the moment I realized I am no longer her. I am me, whole, enough. That's integration. When the old trigger appears, but the new you responds. Healing is not about never being hurt again. It's about knowing that even when pain shows up, you no longer abandon yourself. If this vision of living whole resonates with you, type in the comments, I choose wholeness. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because this channel is about building a community of conscious women who rise together. We're almost at the end of this journey. But before we close, there's one more step. In the final part, I'll show you how to carry this healing forward, so you not only transform your life, but also become an inspiration to those around you. Part 15. Conclusion. Your new story begins here. Take a deep breath. Look back at the journey we've walked together. From hidden wounds to raw truths, from painful patterns to practical healing steps, you've faced it all. And now, here you stand, not as the woman defined by her past, but as the author of her future. The story doesn't end with abandonment, criticism, indifference, invasion, or self-betrayal. The story begins here, with you choosing differently, loving yourself first, and creating relationships that reflect your wholeness. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that's exactly where you are now, the power to choose. Remember this, you are not broken, you are becoming. You are not defined by wounds, you are defined by the healing you choose each day. And you are not waiting for someone to save you, because you already became the woman who saves herself. Think of your life like a blank canvas. For years, maybe others held the brush. Parents, partners, old voices, old pain. But today you take the brush back into your own hands. And with each stroke, self-love, boundaries, presence, authenticity, you paint a story that is yours, vibrant and unforgettable. Now I want you to do one last thing with me. Type in the comments, "My new story begins today." Because sometimes declaring it out loud is the first act of rewriting destiny. And if this video touched your soul, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear these words. That way we spread healing far beyond this space. So here we are, the old cycle is over. The new story begins here. And I hope as you step into your tomorrow, you carry this truth with you. You are worthy, you are whole, and you are unforgettable.